Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Best Books Ever. I'm Tyler, and today we are continuing Cirque du Freak series by Darren Shan. Third book, Tunnels of Blood. Tunnels of Blood. We're really getting into it now. I feel like, like I said, the first book, a lot of prologue. Last book, book two, that was, kind of becoming a vampire, sort of struggling with that. Now, I think we're really building out the world with a few different things in this book. So we will get into it. And also, the world, but also some other characters, um, learning more and more about vampires, which I think is important for whatever the rest of the story will be. After this, we still have 9 more books. So we'll see where this goes. That is, I think, one of the more exciting things about this series. I feel like, we're still relatively early on with everything. Finishing this book, we're now a quarter of the way through the total story. Still not sure where the story is going, though. Like, it sort of still feels almost like a slice of life, where, like, each book is sort of a new thing. But what is this series in totality? Like, what is the big thing we're leading towards at the end to end off a series, we're not sure. We're not sure. I don't even know if any clues have been dropped yet, but we'll see. So, some big stuff to happen in this one. We have well, I guess we'll just end with we'll start with the end like we normally do. We have the big fight between Crepsley and Merlot, and I guess that also includes Darren and Evra and all that. I guess is really the majority of what I want to talk about. So, yeah. So, the very end, it gets very sad, right? The last thing that he says is Merry Christmas to Debbie while she's sleeping, obviously. He can't like wake her up and sort of, because there's no explanation for everything. He would have to say I'm a vampire. He would have to, a lot of explanation, a lot of risks, and also we're not staying, like we're leaving. So it's like, this is best case scenario where it's just like, leave silently into the night. He did set up the tree. So that's sort of his message to Debbie that, like, because before he was like, I promise I won't leave without telling you. Sort of broke that promise, but if he literally just left, then I think that would probably crush Debbie. I think him setting up the tree is like, hey, I didn't just leave. Like that is my little message to you right there. Hey, I was thinking about you. I wasn't just trying to leave into the night, but and again, it also seems worse from his perspective because he knows what he did. Whereas from her perspective, she doesn't know that he like drugged them and like put them to sleep and all that. She probably just thinks that they all got knocked out from the wine. It was a little too strong, and they all kind of forgot the night. Um, and so now it's like, where's Darren? And but you wake up, you see the tree, and then later on, she's not gonna see Darren. She might even go to the hotel and be like, hey. Um, he's like, oh no, they checked out. So it sucks. I think overall it really sucks. With any series, if you followed along with the other series I've done, any sort of romantic relationships, big thing, very much cling to that. So with this sort of brewing a little bit, that is exciting. But now we know, he's leaving. This relationship isn't going anywhere. Never gonna see this woman again. Um, so that sucks. Just another thing on his plate in terms of sad moments that he just kind of has to push through. But with it in general, we have the actual fight. The fight goes very quickly, right? Crepsley rips out the stomach of Merlot, very crazy. But that whole situation was insane. Like, um, I mean, I guess we can go back to them thinking Crepsley was the serial killer, which all signs pointed to not Crepsley specifically, but pointed in his direction, not necessarily at him, but in his like general vicinity of, well, it would make sense that someone like you, a vampire, would be able to do these things. You know, they're killed, they're drained of blood, and then and you know, not only that, but also mixed with the fact that he doesn't tell them anything. He's just leaving all night, not saying where he's going. Um, it's very hard to kind of to not connect those dots, right? Um, so yeah, that was crazy. Uh, but then they, they're able to get in his way. Stuff is explained, and that gets brushed aside for more world building, which is what I really wanted to get to with this. Is we learn about the vampaneze, sort of a separate clan, not really a separate race. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't remember the exact terminology used, but it's basically a separate clan that they seceded from the overall vampire clan. And I really like this because, one, I mean, it's realistic. Like, eventually there's going to be people who have differing thoughts and opinions on like how things should be run. New wave ideas, right? We always see stuff like that, especially in like more like sci-fi or like dystopian stories where it's like, oh, well, this all started because this group of people decided that the way the government was running is wrong, so they wanted to start their own country or whatever. Um, so we get a little bit of that here, but I like the idea of the vampaneze because these are sort of more so the quote unquote evil that humans would paint vampires as. Obviously the vampires, ones like Crepsley, are, their traits are more so what we would equate with vampires. But I think from a human's perspective, they would definitely look at vampaneze as evil. Vampires would be like, evil, sure, I, don't want to get my blood drank, but they don't kill us, they do it quietly and quickly and, whatever, right? The vampaneze are the ones who they kill you, they drain you completely dry. Um, but I do really like how, again, from Darren's perspective, he was getting upset because it felt like Crepsley was defending them. And Crepsley wasn't necessarily defending them, but he was just like, I don't agree with what they're doing, but I understand why they're doing it. I'm not going to join the vampaneze and become one of them or anything like that, but is it really, like, at the end of the day, how much of a spectrum is evil, especially in the eyes of a human? Or it doesn't matter if you're a little evil or a lot evil, you've still crossed that line. So yes, from a human's perspective, vampaneze are way worse, but vampires are also not, highly favored, if humans were to actually know that we're real and all that stuff. So, and then for him to kind of paint them and be like, they have their own beliefs and, they're doing things their way, not because they're evil or not because they're monsters, but because they believe that this is the right way to do things. Again, not agreeing with it, but it's just, they drain all the blood because they feel like taking, because when you drain blood completely, then you like take their soul. That's the thing what happened with Sam Grest. And he's like, that is like beautiful. That's like, that's like spiritual, where it's like they look at vampires as leeches and they're like, how dare you only take some blood? Like you're basically drinking blood from humans for no reason at all. Like you're that's almost like torturing because you're taking their blood and you're not taking their soul to like carry it with you. You're basically doing a lose-lose in our eyes. Again, I think us as the reader, we've obviously been with vampires a lot more than vampaneze, so we believe them to be true. But also as a human, if you're trying to insert yourself into Darren Shan's world, this whole Cirque du Freak world, you'd probably say, if I had to wipe vampires or vampaneze off the map completely, probably choose vampaneze. Because at least vampires don't kill, and if they do, other vampires quickly turn on them, and they judge them, and then they execute them, right? So me being a human in this world, I would like the option to not die. If I have to get fed upon by a creature. But yeah, and then in general, I like this edition because now there's more world building, more lore, more like, hey, are vampaneze just going to be prevalent in this book, or are they going to come back around at some point? Are we going to get like a war between vampaneze and vampires? Because I know they were kind of teasing the idea of that, like, hey, if this ever happens, obviously with them killing the vampaneze, I feel like there's a good chance that we'll see more, just because if the vampaneze ever find out, they are going to hunt down Crepsley and Darren to the ends of the earth. So maybe that's an opportunity for us to see more. But we'll see. We'll see. What else? Oh yeah, and then I guess I didn't really like explicitly talk about the end, but yeah, the whole trap that they laid, because they weren't going to be able to catch Merlot any other way. I don't remember. I'm very interested if this is anyone's first time. I'd like for you to let me know what you were thinking in this moment, because obviously rereading it, I knew that Debbie doesn't die. I remember. I don't remember exactly how, but I remember there being like a scene with her alive. Like I don't remember there being a scene with, Darren like mourning her death or anything like that. So I'm like, I know Debbie doesn't die from this. So, because I don't remember a scene where Darren has to watch Debbie get murdered by a vampaneze. I don't remember that happening. Maybe it happens for further in the book, but this early, I'm like, I just don't remember that happening. At least this early in the book, or in the series, because this was at the end of the book. But yeah, I'd very much like for y'all to let me know like what you thought, because they didn't. I mean, they did leave some hints, right? Like Darren being like, "I have a plan," He said that early on, and then there was even a line where when he was getting the wine, he said that he like fiddled with 3 of the glasses, and that kind of sparked something of like, what do you mean you fiddled with them? Like that's a very very intentional phrase, like he wasn't just retrieving them, he like fiddled with it, and he specifically said 3 of them. So it's like, oh, there's 4 of you, so clearly you're doing something to their glasses. Don't know what it is though. But yeah, that was very cool. The whole trick with the goat, it got him. Crepsley leapt in. It wasn't this big action-packed scene. It was more realistic of like, we're out to kill. We're trying to kill the other person as quickly as possible, and he did. And then Merlot at the end saying "clever boy," and then died. Because that was the whole thing in the beginning, right? Like him calling him clever, him going back and forth between like calling him clever and calling him an idiot. Between like his decision, like, or I guess his indecision with, giving up Crepsley. So that was really cool. But yeah, very very neat ending. We saw some action, we saw some emotional sadness. Yeah, and the introduction of the vampaneze, I think, is important, unless we never see them again, which would be weird for us to only see them for like half of a book in a 12-book series. But hey, we never know. Never know until we read it. Oh yeah, and then even like Evra too. Evra really went through it in this book. Him being tortured by Merlot, that has to suck. Like I'm sure he's gonna have nightmares about that for a very long time. Very hard to watch, very hard to read about, even after the fact. And then past this book, I don't know if we'll see the conversation. I feel like it's not really necessary for us to see it, but even just like, off camera, us knowing that there is a scene where, Crepsley and Darren return, and they return to the depths and to the tunnels, and Evra is probably happy to see them alive for a second, but then, well, probably not happy to see them alive. I guess he doesn't really know, but I guess just like immediate relief of like, oh, they're back. I can be freed. But then after that, I'm sure the emotion is immediately realization that, well, Darren's back and Merlot's not here, so he must have gone through with it. He must have given up Debbie. My friend, my brother, gave up Debbie to save me. Like that's awful for many reasons. And then, I'm sure Darren lets Crepsley take the lead because I'm sure Evra isn't going to want to hear anything that Darren says. So I'm sure like Crepsley takes the lead and says, "Hey, Debbie's alive. Darren did not give up Debbie. Here's what happened." And I'm sure Everett will still be kind of upset because even Darren at the end was, thinking to himself about all the ways that this could have gone wrong. I'm sure there'll still be like a little bit of, uh, you know, him being upset at Darren because there being a possibility that your plan could not have worked and he sort of he could have still killed Debbie. But again, mostly probably another wave of relief of like, okay, Darren did not just willingly say, "Oh yeah, we'll kill Debbie." So that's nice. Speaking of Debbie and Evra, just a couple more things I want to point out. I really like the scene where Debbie meets Evra for the first time. This just goes to show again, another reason why I very much liked the Debbie character, and I'm sad that we'll never see her again. you know, um, just because I don't imagine there would be a reason for, if Merlot was still alive and he maybe still, came back to the city every now and again, I'm sure there'd be a reason for us to come back here, but I don't know why we would ever need to come back here and see Debbie. Like, the ending to Merry Christmas, Debbie feels like a very nice bow to kind of put on their relationship and just kind of move on from this. And again, just another, more emotional baggage, along with like his family and his friends that he has to hang on to, like people that he's loved in some sense or another that he just can never see again, unfortunately. But I do like the scene where they first meet because you're very wary of like how cool is Debbie. I mean, not even cool because any sane person's reaction to seeing someone like Everett would probably be to like scream or like have some sort of reaction of like, whoa, what are you? Wait, I don't understand. But she didn't. She was just like, you're cool. I want to know all about you. So that was really nice. I mean, again, also, one thing to show how cool of a character Debbie is and just, goes to show their like compatibility, but also probably a huge relief for Evra. Evra's full of reliefs, in this book, apparently. Huge relief for him because, again, we know his past and we know how he was discriminated against, but also like beaten and tortured because of his appearance. So he's probably, not very. He's definitely not used to people coming up to him being cool. Probably a lot of like pointing and teasing and shock and fear and disgust. And so for a stranger to come up to him and just immediately latch on and be like, you're not only cool, like, I don't, I'm not immediately like disgusted by your existence. But to go so far on the other end of the spectrum and be like, I like you as a person. I want to hang out with you, Probably very nice for him. What else do we have? Yeah, and then I guess we just have some stuff more towards the beginning of the book that I don't think we should forget. One thing is Crepsley sort of shows Darren the trick that he has to like unlocking locks and also moving things. Because it seems like he has some sort of like telekinesis type power. Where he can move stuff with his mind. Not true. He just moves very fast. It's almost like a little bit of a sleight of hand with him snapping his fingers. So again, he can't like pick stuff and move it with his mind. But what he can do which is really cool. And he does promise to teach Darren this at some point, is because Darren asked him about, well, hold on, how do you unlock locks then? That has nothing to do with like moving fast. You still have to unlock the lock. And I forget the exact explanation, but like it has to do with vampires' atoms being different, and also it does kind of have to do with him moving fast. How he's able to like almost like pull on the like molecular structure of it. So like he can sort of like, you can sort of move things. Not again, not like how Magneto, the Marvel villain, can move metal with just his mind. It's not like that, But he can sort of move. It has to do with like the friction or something. So he can like kind of control it in a way. So that does help him move the tumblers in the lock and actually unlock it. So that's cool. That's pretty interesting. So we'll see if that comes back around at all, if he actually does teach Darren this, and also other things he teaches Darren, because one thing, and I forgot to make a note of this, but one really nice moment in this book was when Darren came back, and this was when he just talked to Merlot in the sewer, found out that Evra was alive. He just declined the offer to trade Crepsley for Evra, and he came back and he explained all this to Crepsley, and there's a moment where Crepsley was like, did you really turn down trading my life? And he says, yes. And he's like, why did you do that? And he's like, because we decided that we were going to trust each other, or something like that. And there's a moment where Crepsley gets uncomfortable because he's like, dang, Darren really did that. Darren really chose me over Evra, which again, it's not really choosing him over Evra. It's more so he doesn't want either of them to be in the hands of an evil creature and be murdered. But from Crepsley's perspective, it's like, I can't believe it. Like, you would think that he likes Evra way more than me. So for him to stick through this, and not only for the sake of, I gave my word that I would trust you, so why would I give you up? But also, he has grown a fondness for Crepsley. It is very different from the first book when he hated him and wanted to kill him at the first chance he got. So then for him to give him a compliment and be like, choosing you as my assistant was a incredible decision. Sort of like returning a compliment, being like, sort of thanking him for not giving him up so quickly, because he very well could have. Again, just wait till the day when he's sleeping, kill him. Very much enjoyed that. So I would like to see them develop that relationship even more, and hopefully him get taught more things and move up in terms of just gaining knowledge and skills, all that. Okay, and then I guess the last couple things have to do with the generals, and more so with that side of world building of like, we still never seen the generals, the princes. Do they have like a center, like a like capital of some sort, like the government or whatever? But there's a moment where we find out that Crepsley will likely have to go to trial for blooding Darren, because Darren is a child. They do not blood children. I don't remember if he said it's like against the law, but it might be just one of those unwritten rules where it's like, it's not illegal, but you really we don't do that because children are children and they have their lives ahead of them. They're still in the middle of like developing, just like physically as well as mentally. So they might not know exactly what they're getting themselves into when they agree to be blooded, which Darren didn't. He did it because that was to save his best friend Steve. He didn't really know exactly what he was getting himself into. He didn't jump at the chance just like Steve was, and that rule may be for people like Steve who somehow find this out and they get blooded young and all that. So it's a very good rule. Children should not be blooded. Uh, just any way you look at it, it makes complete sense. But it's interesting. Like, will a trial happen? What does a vampire trial look like? What does, Gavner said that they'll, most likely just kind of get a like slap on the wrist and, whatever, they're not going to like execute him for this. Most likely they're not going to execute him for this. Um, yeah, I wonder if that'll happen. Again, we know we're reading a book and we know that authors write things in specific ways for specific reasons. So I feel like this is foreshadowing of a trial. I don't actually remember if a trial happens, but I feel like this is foreshadowing some sort of interaction between him and the generals or the princes or whatever to like have that discussion, because Gavner, while he goes way back with Crepsley, Gavner seems like he takes his job very seriously. So the fact that he, not even because of the fact, I guess, just looking at it, he didn't want to judge Crepsley because he felt like it wouldn't be fair because he knows Crepsley. So it's like, it just doesn't really feel right for me to do it because there's no way that I would judge you harshly. There's no way I would execute you. But that feels like my personal feelings are coming into my judgment where this is my job and I really shouldn't do that. So that just goes to show how serious he takes his job. So I feel like, given the chance, as soon as he can, he is going to notify the other generals of this or the princes or whoever, and that is going to bring on some sort of like, all right, we need to talk to Crepsley, you know. But and this goes into the other point, kind of connected to this, which is the last thing I have to say. This does go into Crepsley being a general at one point and knocking at the door of becoming a vampire prince. Very, very cool stuff. I think that just upgrades Crepsley's character immensely in our minds because we're like, oh, okay, Crepsley's not just a random vampire that had a chance encounter with our main character, Darren. Like, no, he actually has some history. Like, he is a very, very, very well-respected vampire. Again, to the point where he was almost a prince, which it seems like that's the highest. I don't know if there's kings and queens or anything like that. But the highest we've heard of so far, at least, is prince. So that's cool. But that also adds to the whole idea that like, they're probably not going to execute him for something like this. But yeah, I would love to see a trial and how it goes and what happens and what happens to him because of it. And what happens to Darren? Oh, sorry about that. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop the yawn. I tried to suppress it, but I couldn't. But yeah, so we'll see what happens, I guess, or we won't, or a trial will never happen. I just feel like them like bringing like Darren Shan, the author, bringing it up, like it just just feels like something's gonna happen. So, but that is it. That is the book. That was Tunnels of Blood. Next book in the series is Vampire Mountain. Don't remember what that is. I assume it's a special mountain, maybe with vampires. I'm gonna yawn again. Oh god, I am tired of this episode. No, but yeah, I imagine. I mean, maybe I just answered my own question. I asked earlier about like them having like a capital for their government. Maybe that's what the Vampire Mountain is. I would assume. I really don't remember. I feel like that sounds right, but I don't really remember. We'll see. Yeah, let me know what you thought of that book. What was this called? Tunnels of Blood? I just said it. Tunnels of Blood, let me talk about that book. Any moments that you really liked that I missed? Any predictions for next time? I mean, if that is the capital, then maybe that does go right into like the trials or something. Maybe trials do happen. Yeah, again, this series is very interesting because you know, I think officially, I think I mentioned this before, but I think officially there's 12 books, but they're kind of broken up into like four trilogies. So, like the first three books are kind of their own like arc, and the second three books are their own arc, and so on and so forth. So, um, but anyway, like them being there being so many books, but them also being kind of shorter, which I think plays into the whole trilogy idea, is that like they don't do a whole lot of like cliffhangers, or it is sort of succinct. So even with this book, like we know how it ends, right? Like he kills the vampaneze, the family is safe. He says Merry Christmas to Debbie, never gonna see her again. And then then we know they're gonna go get Evra. But after that, it's like where they go. Like we assume they're going back to the Cirque, but then again, it's like okay, we're going back to the Cirque. What happens now? They just live at the Cirque for a while. Like that's cool, but that's not really. We've already seen that a bunch. So how interesting is that from like a book perspective? Us reading a book. um, we have the idea that the vampaneze could come after them, but even that isn't like that's not hot on our heels. We're not like, oh man, they gotta run. The vampaneze are gonna be after them. It's like no, there's a good chance that they won't even find the body, and even if they do, how would they connect it to Crepsley and Darren? You know what I mean? So even that isn't really foreshadowing, in my opinion. There's no hope or any like sliver of an idea that they're gonna see Debbie again. So that thread is cut. Um, Again, like there being the trial is really the only thing I can think of. But even that isn't confirmed. That's just something that Gavner talked to, and even him being a friend, he might not even mention it. Him being just a cool dude. Him, just, it's not my job. I didn't see anything. It wasn't even my job to come and tell you this. Like he said, he was just doing it because he was on his way. Like he might not even report it. Um, so I don't know. This series I think is the hardest to like make predictions for the next book, because we're like they don't really give us a whole lot to go off of, and that's not me saying it's that's like a like bad mark on the book. No, that's fine. I'm just saying that given other just comparing it to other books, it's like this book is just kind of stuff just kind of happens and you have to live with it, and I kind of kind of respect that about like Darren's writing style. So but yeah, I suppose that is it. Yeah, until next time, read the entirety of Vampire Mountain. That's book 4. We're making our way through, but listen, this time next week we'll be a third of the way through. It's a pretty sizable chunk, so very fun stuff. And that is it. Read the book. We'll have a good time, and we will see what Vampire Mountain is all about.